Hey guys, welcome to it being 420 somewhere. Today we're going to talk about Dr. Oz and also the crackdown on weed trucks in New York. So we've got this interesting political situation happening in Pennsylvania. The race for the Senate seat is between this large man named John Fetterman, who almost looks like Cyclops, and also Dr. Oz, the guy that you saw on TV all those years, is all of a sudden trying to become a senator in Pennsylvania. John Fetterman, ever since the primaries, has been out of the public eye because he had a stroke that day, and he is still winning this race, at least according to the polls. And so Dr. Oz is kind of going to some faraway places in an act of desperation. He's making some very interesting political ads, and there's one in particular where he shows this cartoon of John Fetterman and he shows screws coming loose out of his head, and right after that is a bong, and it's very interesting. It almost makes John Fetterman look good, like almost this like crazy genius thing. But anyway, check out a clip here.
Now that John Fetterman claims to be recovering, let's pull back his hoodie and examine what's in his head. Looks like he has some screws loose. What's this? Fetterman wants to release 1/3 of all prisoners. That's crazy! Spend more tax dollars, everything will cost more. That's nuts. Slow energy production, gas prices will skyrocket.
So it's fascinating in a couple ways. The first way is you don't really see political ads this way. It'll be interesting to see if this even works for Dr. Oz. I doubt it will, because like I said, it makes John Fetterman's life feel like a Monty Python skit. And also the other one is to show that marijuana is this sticking point that Dr. Oz is trying to drill into people's heads, no pun intended, with John Fetterman being for marijuana legalization and Dr. Oz being against it. And I think that's a little bit of a ballsy gamble on Dr. Oz's part, because I think most people, even in Republican states, are coming out in favor of legalization. And the next story we're going to talk about even shows that. But in Pennsylvania's kind of a swing state. It's a bit purple. I don't think being anti-marijuana is really going to do you any favors in Pennsylvania. Because, for instance, and this brings us to our next story, even in Texas, what used to be the most red state of all is now becoming, crazily enough, a little bit purple, is showing that people are more in favor of marijuana than they are against. And there was a poll that came out that shows 55% of Texans either support or strongly support legal marijuana in the state. That's a huge deal, because Texas, if they legalize marijuana in this state, which they won't because the governor is against legalization, and the only thing he's for really is kind of making the possession of marijuana a Class B or a Class C misdemeanor as opposed to a Class B, which it is now. But if they do legalize eventually, maybe when they get a new governor, maybe just in the next few years, that will send so many ripple effects to other states around it, to other kind of slightly purple-esque Republican states, that marijuana is a winning issue for anybody trying to run for office. And I think hopefully we start to see that in places like Texas and maybe Pennsylvania, depending on if John Fetterman wins in November. Okay, finally, last story is one coming out of New York. We've kind of touched on this whole issue a few times now, where there are businesses that are opening up prematurely, before licenses are being given out in the state of New York for that are selling cannabis. And they're doing it in a few ways. They're doing it either through memberships, they're doing it through donations, and they're basically doing it any way they can to find a loophole so they're not actually selling cannabis where cannabis is not yet legal to sell. And cannabis will probably be legal by the end of this year for some, and then early next year for most. But all of these businesses that are selling prematurely got a cease and desist letter earlier this year from the Cannabis Control Board in New York, and now finally action is being taken. Basically, I think a lot of these businesses were trying to call the Cannabis Control Board's bluff by saying, you're just gonna send this cease and desist letter and not do much. Now, all of the trucks, and not any of the businesses that are actually in a building, but all of the trucks that were out on the streets of New York City which were a lot, are being detained. That's a big, big step on the part of the Cannabis Control Board and the NYPD. And they even sent out a video showing that they have about 20 trucks that were detained. And here's a little clip from a local news station.
It's a police lineup of a different kind. Since Tuesday, the NYPD has confiscated at least 20 trucks. Some say weed on them, others are wrapped in similar marijuana images. Fox 5 was at Bryant Park as this weed food truck was impounded. On its side, clear advertising for edibles and vapes, which are not legal for recreational sales in the state of New York just yet.
Today we're enforcing 301 complaints. In this case, a cannabis truck which is selling illegal edibles.
The NYPD crackdown comes as New York State is poised to start awarding licenses to sell recreational cannabis.
So it's a big crackdown, and they're really just kind of trying to show that they were being serious when they sent these cease and desist letters. And these businesses that were selling or making donations or having some kind of membership plan, they probably will not be able to get licenses at the same time as other people because they've been warned, and now they are basically getting their rights taken away when it comes to marijuana. So we'll see how the repercussions are dealt with once cannabis kind of gets out in the open. But this is a big step, and it's a shame to see it come to this, but also, you know, some people were trying to get a head start and cut corners. Yeah, and that's all we got for this week. We'll be back next week with some more stories. I'll see you then.